Hello, and welcome to the Fintech Times Podcast, focused on discussing the latest fintech topics and trends from around the world. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report all the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world.
Hello and welcome to the Fintech Times podcast. My name is Polly Jean Harrison. I'm the features editor at the Fintech Times, and I'm here today with two fantastic panelists, and we're going to be talking about the role of technology in financial education. So I'm here with Peter Komolafe, founder of Conversation of Money, and Jacqueline Dewey, CEO of Smart Money People. Hello both, how are you today?
Good, thank you.
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited about this conversation today because I feel like financial education is one of those things that's so important, but still something that we're not quite getting 100% right. I think there's still some gaps there, and I'm sure you guys will have some opinions about that as we go along. But just to start off, I'd love to get a bit more information about the both of you, a little bit of a background to yourselves and your companies. So Peter, why don't you just give us a bit of an intro?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Peter Komolafe, and my business is called Conversation of Money, which is actually a YouTube channel and a podcast, a weekly podcast. And the whole thing was brought about because I have 15 years experience in financial services across retail banking, corporate banking, and wealth management. And I've learned a lot in my career. I've had a lot of epiphanies and surprises like, hang on a second, you can do this, and what? Things look this way. And I wanted to create a platform where I could have conversations with people that I wish someone had with me when I was in my 20s. So it's all about basics around financing, investing, getting on the property ladder, credit scores, all that kind of good stuff, really. So it's very much a passion project, which has turned into a business for me now. And I'm hoping to do a little bit more work in TV. I've got a show out at the moment called Secret Spenders on Channel 4. It's a very exciting time.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I think definitely there's a lot still to learn, especially myself, thinking about money, like you're saying about you have those aha moments. Everyone constantly has those. So it's great to have you here today. And then Jacqueline, could you give us a bit of an intro as well, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jacqueline Dewey. As you say, CEO of Smart Money People, which is the UK's one and only review website, which is focused solely on financial products. So we're very passionate about helping people access the right products for them and understanding the differences and getting real feedback on those products from others. But I've worked in financial services all my career, and I've always been quite passionate about financial education. I was one of the founders of Nodl, which was the first free credit report in the UK, and that was really transformed that market. And when I was there, I sort of really started to understand the lack of education, and how people were doing things. And you see those aha moments that really were getting them into trouble because they just didn't understand it, and they didn't know anything about credit reports because they were this big black box. And I think that's been an issue in financial services, been lots of big black boxes which are slowly being unpicked. So yeah, very excited to see where this conversation goes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, when it comes to financial education, like we've said, it's always been quite strange to me, and I'm sure for you too as well, that it's not done more, it's not talked about more for something so serious as money and finances and the impact it can have on your life if you get it wrong. And yet we kind of just, let people go and just get on with it and see what happens. But I mean, when it comes to financial education, why is it so important? Let's start with that. So, Jacqueline, why is financial education so important?
I think it is fundamentally important. I think it's a fundamental skill because I think it's about helping people make well-informed choices, about helping them to manage their money more effectively, and have financially responsible behaviour, which has impact on how they balance their budget, being able to buy a home, income for retirement. And there's lots of evidence out there that people who are financially literate are more likely to succeed. And so to me, that's why I think it is a fundamental skill, really. It has such an impact on all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything there. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a life skill which is essential to a lot of the stuff that we aspire and build to in our adult lives, right? And this isn't going to make an excuse for government or anything like that, because it's government's responsibility to do this. But I do think it's really important to look back to where we were versus where we are right now. I mean, if you think about when the curriculum was created all those years ago, you would go into a job where you would have a defined benefit pension. So you would know that you would always be taken care of in retirement. You could argue that technology wasn't anywhere near as open as it is right now, where you can access invest in markets and all this kind of stuff. Things were so much simpler back then. And what hasn't happened is that the curriculum hasn't evolved in line with the times that we're finding ourselves now. We don't have defined benefit pensions anymore. It's all DC, defined contribution pensions. What does that actually mean? Nobody knows half the time if you're not being told, right? You can invest now. You've got crypto and all of this exciting stuff, but the curriculum is still stuck in that age. We really, really need to get it up to date so we can equip our kids with the ability to make better decisions and have the foundation in place for those decisions as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that entirely. I remember, as a really odd aside, when I was running for head girl when I was in school, one of my big ideas was to have money lessons, like actually teach everyone about mortgages and finances and pensions, and that went down
ahead
like
of your time.
I know. It was a genius idea, and I lost. I didn't win, and that was my big idea. And I've always thought, why aren't we doing that? And to the point where we're here now today, and we're still not really doing that. But anyway, what financial education is on offer? Let's sort of park the idea of we've got the gaps here, but what do we currently have in society today that is on offer to help with financial education? Peter?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, look, where I focus, so my whole point of starting what I do now is to share the knowledge that I do have. So the education that I offer is in way of video, because I think video is really, really big now, just being able to connect with someone over video. And then on the audio spectrum, the podcasts. The feedback that I got from the podcast was, people listen to it at the gym or on their way to work, that kind of stuff. So I guess the mediums for me are video, they are podcast, and anything else in between, really. Obviously, workshops, seminars, courses, they're all there. I still think that, though, even with those, you have to get people to the point to actually seek out that information. But using those mediums right now are really important. And it's great to know that there are lots of people in this space who are passionate about it, making content that is really, really good content to help people make better decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you say about video, because I feel like everything that I learn about finances at the moment comes from TikTok, because there's so many people on TikTok doing those little 60-second videos telling you how to make a budget, and they're so handy. So things like that are amazing. But Jacqueline, what things are you seeing currently?
I think I agree with what Pete's saying there. I think the challenge around that is sort of, as you say, getting people to engage with it and to seek it out. I think TikTok is great from that point of view, because I think it's reaching, again, a different audience, and I think, but I think there's a lot more that needs to be done with certainly a younger cohorts around, it's not pushing them, but encouraging them to seek out some of this information. And, the school curriculum, I mean, what you said about the head girl there, I think that's fantastic. My husband is a teacher, and that is the sort of questions he gets from his pupils. They want to know things like they don't understand it, And but I think that we're not quite getting there yet. And there are lots of resources out there. There's also, the banks, the building societies, young enterprise, fintechs. They've all got fantastic resources. But so if you want to learn, it's there. But it's creating the reason to learn, I think, is the thing that we're probably not getting right yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's sort of a mixed bag, isn't it? There's some people that they really want to learn, they want to know. There are kids who really they see what their future holds in terms of being an adult and think, gosh, how do I do all that? Like things like credit scores and stuff. But then like you say, on the other side, there's just not that desire there 100%. But you mentioned some fintechs there, Jacqueline. What innovation have we seen in this sector currently? I know we have a lot of personal finance apps that have popped around specifically geared towards children and teaching. But what innovations are there?
Oh, I think there's been a huge amount of innovation in the last 10 years. I think you've got apps who help you sort of budget now. I think you've got apps who help you do the sort of things like little bits of saving, so little and often. You've got Hyperjar as one of the examples. That's an old concept. money jars and putting money in pots, but it's a brand new way of doing it, and it's more fun and it's more educational. And then I think, in the kids space, there's been huge innovation in terms of apps around managing pocket money, helping the kids understand how to earn money, and that, chores can be rewarded. And so I think that sort of side, setting goals, and that, I think that's been massively innovative. And so, and I think a lot of that's come from the fintech, either in the banking or specific apps. The incumbent banks that are starting to follow, but I think, the real innovation has certainly come from the fintech sector.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, what are you seeing currently?
Well, exactly the same thing. It's, there are a lot of apps that are doing really, really good work out there at the moment to help people along that journey. And because you've got so many different ideas and methods now, it has the ability to speak and appeal to different kind of personalities and, I guess, traits in people, in terms of how to actually set about going things. I mean, the thing that accounts for kids, people like Beanstalk, all that kind of stuff, really, really good. Because when you start thinking about, how can you give your kids the best start in life, things like, your junior ISAs are a really big component to that. But how do you do it so it's simple and it's on your phone, and you can track it and you can see how it's actually doing? Those kind of things are really important. For the longest time, when you look at financial products, it's been something that you kind of have and it's just kind of like parked there, right? It's never, you have to physically go and seek out that information, where now, because it's very much tech-based, it's on your phone. You can open that up. You can see how much it's increased by. And psychologically, it helps you on the path. It helps you form a habit. And a lot of the time, the thing that we miss the most are habits, because the habits are the ones that form into long-lasting, beneficial, tangible results.
Absolutely. It's all about building those behaviors, isn't it? And I definitely, in just, generally speaking, when it comes to like raising children, the earlier you can get those behaviors in, the better, even like, toddlers under sevens. So if we start with
100%.
money straight away, then that's on just building a success for later in life, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they say that our financial habits are formed by the age of 7, which, when you read that, your mind is just blown, like how. But the fact that kids take in so much, like subconsciously, it's really important to get that embedded in really, really quickly, and have those conversations with children really, really quickly. Play those games and give them pocket money, and, help them understand the value of it. And these apps do a lot of good work in aid of that.
Yeah, and they do it in a way that's fun and friendly and age appropriate. And I think that's the big thing. It's not a one size fits all. It sort of evolves as they go transition. So it keeps it sort of topical for them and them wanting to engage, I think, which is, and forming those habits, as Pete mentioned, that can set lifelong trends.
Yeah, and this is sort of something just popped into my head. Has the movement away from cash hindered anything in a way? Because, when I was young, you'd get your pocket money, it'd be a couple of pound coins, and you'd have your piggy bank, and you'd be able to visualize, right, I've got £4, that's how much I have to spend today. Is the movement onto apps and everything being digital and having all these fantastic pocket money apps, but has that changed things in any way, or is it just the same but slightly different?
You know what? It's funny. I spoke about this on Lorraine last week, and Lorraine was like, "Yeah, you're right. The reality is, right, technology is great. It's wonderful. But when it comes to money, we bypass so much of our psychology just by, I'm just going to Apple Pay it, tap it. We don't get to think about it. Now, I don't know about you, right? But if I have 20 quid in my wallet and I pull out 20 quid, I still have that. I don't want to break this 20 quid. I don't want to break that 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And therefore I'm like, but now I'm going to exchange these notes and I'm going to get some coins back. I don't really want coins. And that really helps me rein in my spending, where sometimes I tap so much and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I just need to stop. So I had to go and take out cash. But you're right. Technology is great. But in the instance of money, it could be really, really damaging if you don't know how to control it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something very tangible, particularly, about having physical cash and understanding the value of what you're handing over. Because when we all tap, it's just like, oh, that was £2.50 there, that was £2.50 there. Before you know it, £20 is gone in the day, but you wouldn't have, broken that note and spent it all. So, and I think maybe for young kids, and that there is something really exciting for them about getting money, in a card for your birthday or for Christmas, and or as you say, being given a coins to put in a piggy bank and seeing it grow up. So it's Yeah, there's pros and cons, isn't there?
It's the excitement of that full piggy bank.
Oh,
That
absolutely,
was.
yeah.
There's something wonderful about that, just to see, yes, I have so much money, so many sweets. But anyway, so we mentioned a little bit earlier about social media things like TikTok and video and then podcast, Peter. What role does social media as a technology play in all of this? Is it a good thing, or is there, are there some risks involved? Because obviously, the internet being the beast that it is there sometimes a bit of risk involved with learning things off the internet when it comes to your money? Jacqueline, what do you think?
Yeah, there is pros and cons. I think the fact it makes it accessible, it gets people talking about it, it's relevant to different age groups. So you can see people of your own age or circumstances talking about it. I think that's all fantastic. There is then this question around the credibility and reliability of content. Not everyone's an expert like Peter, and so I think there's always that little question mark in something. And knowledge is power, as the saying goes. But sometimes people still need expert help. A mortgage, for example, is a massively big financial decision. Is sort of robo advice the right advice for long term, product like that, or do you really need to go and see an expert and engage with them? So I think has a time and a place, but it needs to be, I think, sat alongside other resources as well, because it's not always as clear cut. And particularly if you're not particularly confident or unsure, having that professional input or going elsewhere for things can be balanced, but it can help educate and give you the knowledge to have those sensible conversations, though, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, obviously, what do you think, being an expert on the internet as well as other places?
Oh my God. I have to ask myself constantly, am I adding to the noise that is out there? Look, I can't complain about what social media has done for me and my business and the exposure that it's got me. I mean, without social media, I wouldn't be on a Channel 4. I wouldn't be going on TV and doing all these things, right? But at the same time, it's very, very, it can be dangerous. And this is where the image and the things that social media perpetuates sometimes isn't useful to the conversation we're trying to have. What we're trying to do on social media, or at least what I'm trying to do at social media, is empower people to make better financial decisions. But if you think about how social media actually functions, it is about, what you can see right here, right now. There's an element of instant gratification that it perpetually promotes, and that is counterintuitive to some of the tangible conversations that you need to be having on social media. I mean, there is so much danger right now, and I'll just give you two instances. In the crypto space, people are looking at TikTok and YouTube for what cryptos you should invest in. Just last week, UST Luna went from $120 odd a coin to zero. People lost millions. I mean, the popular boxer and YouTuber KSI lost 2.9 million on this one thing. Now, he's got a massive following on social media. That he will influence people to go and buy this thing. People have lost life savers in that kind of stuff. And when you look at the other spectrum, when you talk about investing, which is also big on social media and TikTok, you just need to have a look at some of the things that are said now. And it's people creating content because financial content is very lucrative when it comes to ad revenue and sponsorship and brand deals. But it almost feels as though they just watch a video, take notes, then just regurgitate some of that stuff. And even when you look at some of the ads, I mean, I look at some of them there's one on TikTok right now. I want to talk, mention the brand, but the ad is, "You've made so much money. How have you done it?" Or, "I bought these stocks." There is no risk warning in that at all. So it's a great space to operate in for someone like myself. I've got expertise and I can go into in-depth nuance if required. But at the same time, there are so many people in it that may not necessarily understand the nuances, and misinformation becomes prevalent, and people then take that as being verbatim and potentially make incorrect, damaging decisions as a result.
And I think the regulators are way behind. Technology moves at such a pace, the content moves at such a pace, and what picks up. The regulators just cannot keep pace. And by the time they do, moved on.
Yeah.
So and I think that is potentially an issue.
Everyone wants to get rich quick, don't they? Like at a base level, if someone tells you can make so much money, you're like, "Oh, I'm interested. Okay, tell me more." And it's that base level of, oh yeah, I'd love to make a lot of money. And you see on the news, so and so made this amount of money with Bitcoin that he paid £2 for 10 years ago, and you want that to be you. So I get, and then that translates in just to some bad decisions that maybe you don't quite think through.
Especially now with the cost of living crisis as well.
Yeah.
I say this to people all the time on my channels. I say, look, especially in the crypto space, there's a lot of scams. Now you need to have eyes in the back of your head, because you're going to see more and more and more of this stuff, and it's going to be enticing, but you have to try and keep your logical brain in check and on the ball to really be, I guess, critical around, does this sound right? Does it sound feasible?
Yeah, you really do. You can get sucked in sometimes, can't you, if you're not thinking hard enough. Moving away from social media then, but staying with this idea of risk. Are there any risks associated with using technology in general? So you mentioned just then like regulation and compliance, advertising, things like that. What kind of risks are involved with using this technology to manage and learn about your finances, if anything? Peter?
One of the risks for me is thinking that you've got all the information that is needed at the time when you make that decision. So there is a huge responsibility on a lot of the app providers to provide information and education to help people make the best decisions. And sometimes it's not just a linear, easy, straightforward decision to make. There are branches, so it's a decision tree. And I think the risk that I've certainly seen is people feel as though they've watched one video or they've read one piece of content and that's sufficient. And this then leads on to the question of, do you actually need proper advice and help along the way? I mean, look, apps are great. It helps you get started straight off the bat, but misinformation and not knowing that you have something missing at the time when you're making that decision, for me, is a massive, massive risk for people, because you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. And unfortunately, what I found is, certainly over the last 18 months of me being on my channel, there are a lot of people who've invested, for example, who didn't know a piece of information at the time when they took the decision, whereas if they had, they wouldn't have made that decision. And they thought at the time, I know everything I need to know.
Yeah, it's a minefield sometimes, isn't it? And there's always another article to read. There's always another video to watch. And it probably gets to the point as well where you learn too much, you research too much, and then
Analysis paralysis, yeah.
is detrimental in that way as well, by just constantly absorbing too much information. Jacqueline, what do you think?
I don't disagree. I think, you covered the main points. So I think it's that sort of, thinking that you've got all the information when, there's a lot more to understand, or actually, and I think that relates more to the bigger decisions. I think, some of the simpler products, that's absolutely fine. You've nothing much to lose. But I think particularly when you talk about investments, pensions, mortgages, that's where I think there's more onus and, of broadening your understanding and making sure that you are making the right choices and that you're fully informed. And that's not always clear on within the technology and within apps and things like that. So I think, I think that's the main thing from my point of view as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess when it comes down to, the responsibility of things, is it the responsibility of these fintechs and of these financial organizations to teach people about their financial education? Like, where does the responsibility come in? Or is it more, maybe should it be left to independent third parties, but then perhaps have that possible upselling? Should it be like with the schools, with the government? Where does the responsibility lie here? Jacqueline?
I don't think it lies with one single person or company. I think it's, I think as parents, we have a responsibility to educate our children in finances. I think the government through the school curriculum and other sources, but then also providers. So I think it sits across the board, because I think it's not something that is a one-off intervention and then that's it done. That's you sort of for life. I think you have different, what a 7-year-old want them to understand versus a 50-year-old versus a 35-year-old is very different. So I think it's an ongoing process, to be honest. And I think each of the, these companies that we interact with or the institutions that we interact with have all got a duty to help education. But it's also a thing about we've got to learn to talk about money, and that money is not a bad thing to talk about. Very sort of stiff British upper lip thing, isn't it? About, about money, talk about wages. And actually, when you look at cultures where they do, it's a lot better. And that's what we've got to get better at, talking about money. It's not something that, is just something that should be talked about behind closed doors. It's actually something we should be having, ongoing dialogue about it, because it's such a fundamental part of our lives.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's so difficult sometimes to have these conversations, even though they're the most important ones sometimes. But Peter, what do you think?
I agree 100%. I think the responsibility can't just be siloed upon one app provider or one segment of the industry, so to speak. I think the responsibility is everyone's. And in the educational side of things, we need fundamental change at the government level to push a current curriculum that is tangible. My partner's a teacher, and a lot of the time, teachers are asked to teach things that they may not necessarily understand. And in a paper that was published, I think it was in 2018 or so, the paper said you need help from the financial services industry to do so. And so I think it's really important that we get that from the school. But when it comes to apps and fintech, that side of things, 100% there's a responsibility there, just in terms of protecting your consumers, protecting your customers, doing the right thing. I guess where you have a little bit of conflict there is that, companies ought to think about the bottom line. So how do you marry and match up that bottom line? You need to make profits with the education and putting people in the position where they can make the best decisions, even if it means that they don't use you, they go somewhere else. So it almost feels like there's a conflict, but it is everybody's responsibility. And yes, parents, we need to have conversations with our kids about money, but where does that begin? If you didn't have that, those lessons when you were in school through your life, how can you have those conversations? So there has to be a hub where this stuff is available and it's open and it's transparent and it's good information. What form that takes, should it be formalized in one thing? I don't think so, but we need more and more financial education, because at different junctures in life, you're going to make different decisions, and that decision tree is different each junction.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree entirely with all of that. I think obviously we've talked a lot about fintech and technology, as is the subject of this podcast. But what is it that fintech has been able to do that incumbents haven't been able to achieve? I feel like we haven't really mentioned banks and sort of more traditional financial institutions all that much, purely because they aren't really doing anything in this sector. So what is it about fintechs that have been able to achieve this in the financial education? Is it technology driven phenomena, or is it just fintechs thinking differently as per kind of usual in the sector? Peter?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, look, my career started in a bank as a cashier, and the reality is, a lot of these new incumbent, banks, Starling, for example, Monzo. You think about all of those banks that are tech led. They don't have the issues of having old legacy systems that would cost hundreds of millions to revamp. And this is the problem that some of the traditional banks have. It's like trying to turn an oil tanker. It's going to take a very, very long time. But the unfortunate thing for them is, by the time they've made, even 1 degree of a turn, the technology's moved even further ahead. So there's a massive catch-up game that they have to take part in. But I think ultimately with fintech, they have been able to appeal to, number one, the way we live in our lives right now, which is the fact that everything's now available on a phone. And they've been innovative in making these things simple. I mean, just, take pensions as an example, right? A pension, if you had one, you would have if you were in a DC scheme or something like that, right? With your employers, you would have your paperwork, and then you might get a letter every year. Most people just completely lose all of their old pension details because they move addresses so much. Now it's on your phone, and there are apps that will help you aggregate all of your investments, all of your accounts into one place. So you can see, right, in my current account, I've got this. In my emergency fund, I've got this. In my pension, I've got this. That is more in line with the way we're living now, where it is on your phone. And it enforces positive habits for positive outcomes later on. And so the old incumbent banks, they've got a long way to go. And unfortunately, they're not able to embrace technology quick enough because of legacy systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacqueline, what do you think?
I agree, and I think I think as well the fintechs have been set up with a much clearer, sort of more singular proposition and mission than a lot of the banks have had, who have grown up more organically, but having that no baggage and being, I think they're much more customer driven. So and I think that offering choice and convenience and actually a much greater degree of responsiveness, so they're able to change and move and innovate. And also I think they've used social channels, so they're engaging where customers want to engage, and you don't have to go to a branch, you don't have to do this, as you say, you can do it all from your phone, you can do it at a time that suits you. So they're content rich, which that you can't necessarily get that elsewhere. So ultimately they're making people's lives easier, so that's why they've been successful. And there's a degree of more fun in them as well that sort of probably is lacking from traditional financial services.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well that, it adds an element of competition, which is absolutely vital. I mean, I just speak specifically for the investment space. I mean, if you think about the old fund managers, wealth managers, they've had their cake to eat for a very, very, very long time, with ridiculous management fees. Whereas now you can invest via an app and keep your fees really, really low. And what that means is that as a consumer, you get to keep more of the profits for the risk that you're taking in the markets. Those kind of benefits are almost intangible, really, because not only can you use that as a catalyst to say, look, guys, you can get to keep a little bit more of your money, and the process is a little bit simpler. It's a lot more accessible now, but actually people can find that they can see a real benefit, because guess what? If I do this, by the way, yes, it's not perfect for 100% of people going down the, an app to invest or whatever, robo investor, but it means that they can feel as though they have more control. And I think from a psychological point of view, that's what's really, really needed in this sector, because for the longest time, there's been a lot of distrust in banks and financial services, sometimes for the right reasons. I've been in the industry long enough to know some really, really bad times and people who don't really do a great job. And that's, a dime a dozen. But it does give people more power to say, I'm in control of my finances now. And you can build trust from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, there's a lot of benefits for consumers when it comes to financial education. But what are the benefits to the fintechs? Why should they bother to do this sort of thing? Peter, we'll go back to you for that one.
I think from a business point of view, for a fintech, one of the big things that the industry face right now, and this is a really big thing for fintech in my mind. If you look at the population and the divide of wealth, right? So baby boomers, they've enjoyed property price increases over the last 2-3 decades or so. But the reality is that in the next 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a huge wealth transfer. That's deemed to be around about 1.5 trillion pounds, right? And that's going to go from baby boomers, move down to the newer generation, to the younger generation, who frankly are not looking at the old ways of investing, the old ways of managing money that fintech have been essentially been targeting and engaging with actively right now. So the skin and the prize at the end of this rainbow for fintech is absolutely huge. So providing information, education to empower people to make the best financial decision in the long run has huge rewards down the line when you start taking into consideration this wealth transfer that's going to be happening in the next 10 to 15 years. So the prize is big. And if that alone from a commercial point of view isn't good enough reason for a fintech to bother, well, I don't know what they're doing. But, we have to be mindful that this comes with responsibility, that yes, we need to have robust propositions in the fintech space. Yes, we need to be providing information that is tangible and getting the balance between this information that will help people make the best decisions and tying up the bottom line. But, just from a business point of view, it makes 100% sense that this is happening right now, because the needs of the new generation who are going to be inheriting this money is not like what it was 20, 30 years ago. They're facing completely new challenges. Getting on the poverty ladder is a massive, massive challenge. They're facing AI taking their jobs. We're facing, rampant inflation right now. The challenges are new, and fintech are prime position to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. That all sounds, I completely agree with you there. And Jacqueline, what did you think to this one?
Yeah, similar thing. It's no different how traditional businesses, building customer loyalty, engagement, and that the fintech's got to do that. And in fact, in some ways, they've got a harder job because there's more of them, there's more competition, and there's new innovative ideas coming out all the time. So it is all about building that trust, getting people engaged with them, and being the app that stays on your phone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I guess coming to sort of the end of this discussion now, but Is it working? Are we seeing success? Obviously, we still have a bit of a ways to go, as we've discussed, but are we seeing success in this? And does that success depend on anything specific? Is it, the audience? Is it the way people are learning? How is it going, I guess, in the industry? Jacqueline?
I think it's probably baby steps, but I think the more that we can see all these innovations happening, then the more that will grow. But I don't think fintech on its own will solve the problem. It needs to, I think, and Peter alluded to this earlier on, the government strategy, how we embed it in education, and not in the curriculum that was written 20 years ago, but in a new curriculum that's right for today's environment and technology. So I think they can play a part. It's making change, but it's baby steps, as I said, definitely.
And Peter, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I mean, I think, every firm will have their own measures of success. Whether that is universally translated, I guess, is up for debate. But I think that the existence of these companies is testament to the fact that it is working, and the fact that there are so many new companies coming to the forefront is testament that there is an element of success with this. Because I think the need is there. It's basically satisfying the need in the market right now. I think generally speaking, we do need governmental direction in terms of education. We definitely need that at the root of our education system. That's a tangible way of making a long-lasting impact. Can you argue that, corporate companies, traditional banks and new fintechs have a responsibility to help 100%, even in the school sense? I think there's maybe a clever way of actually doing that under a consortium. But I would definitely say there's success in the space, but I think there's a lot more to do as well.
Fantastic. And then just very finally, we've already touched on it already, but I'm just going to ask you as a closing question, what do you think to the future? Say in the next 5 or 10 years, what are your predictions? But more importantly, what are your hopes in this space, Peter?
Oh, predictions. I think that there will be more companies that will be positioned, and it's one that I'm looking to work on myself, positioned to help people make decisions as they travel through different stages of life. I think that will be a really, really big piece to work on, empowering people around how do you achieve life goals? What are the decision tree decisions that you need to make? What's that process look like? And having an end-to-end kind of like product with solution type thing. That's where I hope it to be. I would hope at some point in the near future, we can kind of get to work on this financial education in school, because, it is so big, and it's not just about us now sat here on this podcast talking about this. This is a long lasting legacy piece that will impact generations to come. And it's something we have to get right. So I hope that we are, in 5 years, I think, really, and not 10, looking at having something a bit more robust in the education system around financial education. And fintech can play a part in that, to be fair.
Amazing stuff. And then Jacqueline, your predictions and your hopes.
Like Peter, I hope that, we can't allow another generation to come out of the education system with a lack of financial knowledge, and particularly as we go, into this period potential of inflation and cost of living rises. So I think, that's definitely something that I hope and, will be tackled. I think as well, I think if we can see the positive benefits of fintechs continue to grow, as we said, playing that greater role in that journey as well. I don't think, the fintechs aren't going anywhere. I think we're going to see more and more innovation in this space. And I think, a bit like Peter as well, I'd like to see that more end-to-end sort of, taking you through different stages of life type solutions, I think is where the next natural evolution will go.
Amazing stuff. Well, that does bring us to the end of the podcast today. But thank you so much both for joining me. It's been absolutely fantastic to talk about this with you. And it's such an important topic. So I hope more conversations like this are had, and hopefully some differences will be made. But thank you so much again, both of you, for joining me. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you.
Thank you.
Nothing else.
Thank you for listening to the Fintech Times podcast. We hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. Don't forget to check us out at thefintechtimes.com and subscribe to our monthly publication to keep up to date with all the latest fintech news.